Throughout the 2000s and 2010s, Blizzard was a dominating force in gaming. World of Warcraft, Diablo, Hearthstone, Overwatch, you name it all, Blizzard was probably hitting it out of the park. And for the most part, fans could not get enough. Overwatch 1 in particular, since it's relevant to this video, absolutely dominated the gaming landscape both before it came out during its beta and post-release once it came out in 2016. It pretty much took over all parts of the internet, and if you know what I mean, it really was everywhere. Recently though, that is anything but the case, as Blizzard seems to be lining up scandal after scandal. From the huge scandal regarding abuse that was throughout the company, you had them banning and attempting to take away the prize money from a Hearthstone pro in Taiwan because he supported his country, the Warcraft remaster, Diablo Immortal, and now Overwatch 2 amongst other things. Blizzard continues to absolutely strike out. If you're not aware, Overwatch 2 released this Tuesday on October 4th, and honestly, if you weren't aware, I wouldn't be that surprised, as it seemed there was almost no marketing push. It almost seems like the backlash toward Overwatch 2 has completely outshined any type of positive marketing. Regardless though, the game is out, and that means we get to talk about it. Because while I will admit I have had some fun playing it, the game sets a horrific precedent that could damage the entire gaming landscape if other companies follow in Blizzard's footsteps. So let's get ready to hop on in. Before we do though, I just want to point out some of my footage in this video won't be related to exactly what we're talking about, and that's just because the servers are so bad it's hard to record footage, and I have to get ready for a trip, so I'm kinda on a time crunch. Anyways though, let's hop on in. Overwatch 2 was hyped up by Blizzard as the sequel to Overwatch 1, and has been in development now in some shape or form for years. But here's the thing, Overwatch 2 is not a sequel. This is at best a seasonal update to a live service game, packaged up as a sequel in an attempt to scam unaware buyers. If you're like me, and you probably are if you're watching gaming YouTube videos, you probably pay attention to gaming news and kinda knew this was going to be the case with Overwatch 2. But for many less in tap with the day-to-day ongoings of gaming, they're gonna see that Overwatch 2 is out now and think, oh shit, a sequel for Overwatch. I remember buying and playing that back in 2016 and then get lured into the game. A game that is admittedly free to play, but obviously includes a variety of premium packages that you can purchase before you even enter the game. So I just want to reiterate, unaware buyers will 100% be tricked by this practice, and Blizzard is fully aware of this. Whether it is specifically the player themselves purchasing the game that is unaware, or maybe it's a parent or a grandparent, Overwatch 2 packages will be purchased by people who aren't aware that this isn't a real sequel. Now obviously you can just download the game for free, which many will do, but Blizzard's reasoning for calling this Overwatch 2, besides the obvious money-hungry shareholders, was the pitch that Overwatch 2 was supposed to include a brand new and expansive PvE mode along with the overhauls to the PvP. But here's the thing, the PvE isn't there, and currently there isn't even a set release date. All we know currently is it's supposed to release sometime next year. Today's Overwatch 2 includes nothing but the multiplayer for Overwatch. Many have noticed this also meant the shutdown of Overwatch 1, which is sad if you view this as a true sequel, because usually you don't shut down the previous game just because the sequel is coming out. But when you view this as what it actually is, a seasonal update for a live service multiplayer game, it makes a lot more sense why the original Overwatch multiplayer is no longer playable. In all reality, it wouldn't really make much sense for Overwatch 1 to exist, because Overwatch 2 and Overwatch 1 are the same game with some new content, balance updates, and a fresh coat of paint thrown onto some of the maps. Do not let Blizzard fool you. This is not Overwatch 2. This is Overwatch with a 2022 seasonal update that came out after years of content drought. On top of all of this, which was going to happen regardless of the launch, at the time of recording this video, the game still just straight up doesn't work. I mentioned this earlier when I said it's been hard to get footage, but ever since the release of the game, the Blizzard servers have been experiencing DDoS attacks, which has led to a whole slew of connection issues on top of huge queues just to try to be able to get into the game. Queues that you have to be lucky to even get through, because a lot of times you'll just get disconnected during the wait and then have to go all the way to the back of the line. I do also want to note that while maybe DDoS attacks toward their servers don't happen on all their launches, Blizzard and being unable to log into a new launch go hand in hand. Whether it's World of Warcraft or Hearthstone or even Overwatch the first time around, Having server issues on launch day is a very common trend for Blizzard, and I'm not saying that DDoS attacks don't exist, I'm sure they do, but I imagine we probably would have had some form of server congestion regardless of if those happened or not. I'm sure though that those have made it a lot worse. Once you are lucky enough to make it through the doors, you then get to play Overwatch 2, with the nice caveat that you're most likely going to disconnect during your play session at some point and have to do the whole waiting queue all over again. Another shady business practice here in Overwatch 2 is that it now requires you to attach your phone number to your account just to be able to play. This on its own is kind of weird and seems unnecessary, but it is in theory to prevent hacking and smurfing, especially with the game going free to play. However, news has come out that if you own a prepaid phone, you are now completely unable to play Overwatch 2. The game just straight up does not accept it as a valid phone number, and you will not be able to play. This is a pretty big oversight, as while prepaid phones aren't necessarily the most popular thing, they are still used to somewhat of a decent degree, and I've seen various accounts of people being unable to play, making the rounds all over social media. Some of these people even bought the $40 edition of Overwatch 2. Many have also criticized the business model for Overwatch 2. Unlike the original Overwatch, which had the upfront box price, Overwatch 2 is totally free to play. Overwatch 1's model was based around the fact that it had that original cost, plus the purchasable loot boxes that you could get cosmetics out of. On the other hand, Overwatch 2 is free to play, but then they're going to monetize you in the form of battle passes. And while I can't actually get into the game while I'm writing the script to verify if you can buy specific skins, thanks Blizzard, this is me just cutting in during editing. My game finally opened, and I was able to verify the game does have a store, very similar to other live service games, where obviously you can buy the battle pass, or you can also buy different bundles for various characters that'll give you different skins and other cosmetics. The shop also has a seasonal section, which I'm sure will rotate all sorts of different things, and then there's an Overwatch League themed tab, which has all sorts of Overwatch League themed skins and also a bunch of different team skins. It is important to note that they have gone away from the loot box model entirely, which is a W for Blizzard, one that they didn't get a whole ton of with Overwatch 2. That said, on the flip side, you no longer get all the characters in the game. If you owned Overwatch 1, you do get all the existing characters, with new ones that you will unlock through the Battle Pass as they are dropped into the game. However, if you are a free-to-play player, you just get a select choice of characters, and then you have to unlock the rest. While this is similar to business models for other character-based free-to-play titles, in Overwatch, it can definitely hamper you as a player if you're trying to play competitively. Overwatch is very counter-based, and not having those specific character counters in certain situations can put you at a disadvantage versus someone who owns all the characters. Especially with some of the balance changes in Overwatch 2, which definitely incentivize being able to switch characters more frequently. In Overwatch 1, when you would switch characters, you would lose all of your ultimate charge. However, in Overwatch 2, you can swap willy-nilly between the different characters and retain your entire ultimate charge. This is obviously a big deal because now if you need to change characters spur of the moment, you can without the downside of losing your ultimate. There's also a little bit of strategy there, as you could try and farm an ultimate with a character that's a little bit easier to farm ultimate on, and then switch to a different character once you have it. I personally haven't been doing too much of that, but as the meta evolves for Overwatch 2, or maybe even at higher levels of play in the current game, people might already be doing this. Now, Overwatch 2 does provide some new content and balance changes that have received some mixed results. So we already talked about the switch from the loot box model to the battle pass model, but probably the biggest change is that Overwatch is no longer a 6v6 game. They have switched it to a 5v5 game, with the role queue having 1 tank, 2 DPS, and 2 healers. This is actually a pretty huge change, as it completely changes the meta and play style that you're going to experience in an Overwatch match. At a high level, you're going to see a lot less shields and be able to fight people a little bit because people aren't going to be stacking tanks, and personally, I have enjoyed this change. They also made the classes a little bit more unique, as each class of character has its own passive. The support characters now regenerate health over time, tank characters have reduced knockback, and the DPS characters get a burst of movement and reload speed whenever you get an elimination. So these makes the different classes a tiny bit more unique from each other. Along with the switch to 5v5, Overwatch 2 also includes 3 new characters. Here we have Sojourn, Junker Queen, and Kiriko, 1 DPS character, 1 tank, and 1 support. Sojourn is sort of similar to Soldier 76 in terms of playstyle, and plays a little bit more like a traditional suitor character. Junker Queen is the tank, who is about bleeding enemies to help you heal more, and Kiriko can buff up her allies' attack speed. The game also dropped 6 new maps, some of which are unique to the new game mode Push, which is sort of like tug of war but backwards. Instead of, pulling a rope and trying to pull someone over the line, you instead push a robot that starts in the middle and then you push it toward the enemy's side. You do this just like you would push a payload. If you're standing around it, it's going to push toward the enemy, and if nobody's on it, it doesn't move, and then if they're on it, it moves back toward your direction. Push, in my opinion, is actually pretty fun. It sort of replaces Assault though, which was the 2-point capture mode that I think a lot of people had sort of gotten sick of in Overwatch 1. Overwatch 2 also includes some hero reworks, like Orisa can now throw javelins, Bastion no longer has the stationary tank unit, Doomfist is now a tank, and then also changes that happen throughout the life of Overwatch that you may not have seen if you stopped playing early on are present in Overwatch 2. On top of this, they also kind of revamped a lot of the existing maps, not in terms of layout, but in terms of lighting and time of day, so they look a little bit different than probably the last time you played them, which gives them a new fresh coat of paint, but doesn't really change how the existing maps and game modes were played, other than the fact, obviously, now that it is 5v5. Overwatch 2 also includes a slew of new cosmetics that you're going to get through the Battle Pass. And that is, for the most part, the new content in Overwatch 2. I do also just want to quickly talk before we end the video about the rank system. It's not the end of the world by any means, but the changes to the rank system in this game are weird as heck. In a normal game, your rank goes up and down at the end of every game based on whether you won or lost or maybe a performance bonus. But in Overwatch 2, you don't actually see any adjustments to your rank until you win 7 games or lose 20 games. Not a deal breaker per se, but just a weird design choice. I'm not exactly sure why they did this. Another change in Overwatch 2 that I actually do like though is the scoreboard. In Overwatch 1 there was no scoreboard. If you held tab, all you could see was your stats and then gold, silver, and bronze medals if you were the first, second, or third in that specific stat. Overwatch 2 has replaced that with a proper scoreboard, and I do really like that because it allows you to actually see who is performing, or at least gauge your numbers compared to your teammates in the other team, just like you would in any other game. Big fan of them going to a normal scoreboard. So is Overwatch 2 a worthy sequel to Overwatch 1? Bluntly put, no, it's not. It's a marketing scam meant to trick people into playing the game and spending money, not realizing that it isn't really a new game. Or at the very least, the hope is to trick people into downloading the game again and returning, and then hoping that they stay in the game, maybe spend a little bit of money before they leave. That said though, despite my disdain toward kind of the strategy of Overwatch 2, I have actually enjoyed my time playing so far when the servers actually let me in. While I haven't been a big Overwatch player for many years, the switch to 5v5 seems to be a refreshing change to the meta that I have been enjoying. That, or maybe I'm just happy to be playing something new. Overwatch 2 shouldn't exist, and our support of it will most likely lead to more companies doing similar shady and money-grabbing schemes. That said though, I am a hypocrite, and will probably continue to play Overwatch 2, at least for the time being, as I'm just happy to be playing something fun and something that isn't a battle royale. From my perspective, Overwatch 2's balance changes make it feel much more like an FPS than the shield simulator that was the prior version of Overwatch, and while hardcore fans may not like that change, I personally find it refreshing. I am also interested to see what the PvE mode ends up being sometime next year when it finally releases, but for the meantime, screw it. Check out Overwatch 2 if the servers allow you to get into the game, and just see if you enjoy it. Maybe don't reward Blizzard with your money, but I don't think Overwatch 2 is completely terrible. And that, guys, is gonna do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm sorry if the footage was kind of random and if the editing was a little bit more simple. By the time you guys see this, I'm probably on a plane. And trying to get into the game to get proper footage literally wasn't possible. I just sat in the queue forever, which is a really fun time. I'm definitely pretty thrilled about that. If you enjoyed the video though, you know what to do. Make sure you guys subscribe to my other channel, RAsh Live. It's where I've been live streaming, and I'll probably live stream some Overwatch 2 once I'm back. Other than that, follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, and I will see you all next time.